Bane is just flat out one of Batman's best villains. He's also my personal favorite Batman villain, meaning they have had a very extensive rivalry throughout their history in comics. And because of that, on screen, Bane has actually gotten a lot of love, excluding that one very horrible time. Because of the popularity of Tom Hardy's Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, Bane is also one of the most LARPed Batman villains of all time. You will hear consistently people bring up Bane beats Batman because he broke his back. And although this is true, in this video we're going to be discussing the matchup in full and explaining who actually wins between the two characters. For those of you who don't know, I'm Abyss from the Hive Mind Comics, and let's get into the video. So I guess we could just start with the most important and probably the most iconic encounter that the two have. This is from the iconic Batman storyline of Nightfall, where in this story we see Bane plotting on how to defeat Batman. Bane had multiple opportunities to fight Batman, but instead he waited it out and chose the moment correctly. Bane set his plan into motion by attacking Arkham Asylum and making sure all of its inmates were free onto Gotham. Despite Batman trying to stop it, he failed. This, however, was because Batman wasn't actually operating at 100%. Batman had been sick and tired, and being both sick and tired, Batman was forced to keep taking on all of these events and try to bring these criminals back into Arkham Asylum. But because there were so many of them and they were all across Gotham, Batman wasn't sleeping. He was consistently going out on patrol trying to bring them in. And because of this, Batman was extremely fatigued. On top of him also having to take the physical punishment of actually engaging in combat with these criminals. Whilst this was all happening, Bane was studying and watching Batman, going as far as learning that Batman was Bruce Wayne. With this newfound information, Bane would wait at the Wayne Manor, waiting for Batman to return from his patrols. And whilst Batman was extremely physically and mentally fatigued from days with no sleep and constant patrols, Bane snatched the opportunity and defeated a helpless Batman, breaking his back in the iconic shot of him breaking the bat. So even though Bane is 1-0 against Batman, it's hard to say if he's really going to beat Batman in a fair 1v1 because of how physically and mentally fatigued Bruce actually was. Which leads us directly into their next encounter, where Batman had fully recovered from the injuries given to him by Bane and even got some added training on top of that. However, this fight was essentially just the two brawling, and there's not really much to dissect here. Both characters are fighting with the intention of defeating each other, and they go pretty high relative. But as soon as Bane starts to get the upper hand on Batman, Batman thinks about the traumatic experiences he's had losing his parents, and it pushes him to a fit of rage, which pushes him to overcome and defeat Bane. Which leads us to the conclusion that within this era, a non-weakened Batman is just superior to Bane. After their previous fight, Bane would return for one last fight within this era. The two would fight aboard a ship, and they would square off with Bane having the added advantage of a gun at some points. However, it's important to note that within this fight specifically, Bane isn't aided by additional venom usage. On top of that being the case, a supposed Batman victory would be achieved through an off guard on Bane, essentially meaning Batman didn't just beat down on Bane here. Therefore, a conclusion to be drawn from this fight specifically is kind of difficult because this is more or less a weakened Bane because he doesn't have any added venom, and Batman landed a cheap shot. Now, the two don't have any more direct encounters within the post-crisis era. However, Bane's interactions with other characters give us great insight in the overall narrative between the rivalry with Batman and Bane. Bane talks about Batman a lot, and he gives us a clear indication of his mindset towards Batman. Bane just accepts that he's worse than Batman, so much so that he would accept death by Batman's hand. But he also realizes that if he were to defeat Batman, he couldn't just do it with bare hands. He would have to resort to alternative methods. These methods that he describes is breaking Batman mentally and emotionally, attacking the ones around Batman, crippling him. This is pretty much identical to what he was doing in Nightfall, wearing Batman down and fatiguing him so he would be physically weak enough for Bane to beat him. Now, keep this in mind. This is a very important narrative. Now, there's no point in me spending a lot of time in the New 52 era because they have a few fights, but they all pretty much end the same. Batman just beating the fuck out of Bane. there really isn't any contention or argument for Bane even standing a chance against Batman in this era. There's only two real fights that are noteworthy. Bane was amped up on a super venom, which was infused with fear toxin, which pushed Bane's physical prowess way over what he can normally output with just using venom. Batman, of course, loses this fight, but again, it's a super amped Bane. But a little after this, Batman fights Bane again, where Bane would also be super amped on venom. However, this amount of venom isn't amped with fear toxin, so this isn't above its normal capabilities by any means. And Batman ends up winning this fight, which is just more evidence that in the New 52, Batman was concretely above Bane. So much so that we get a repeated sentiment from Bane yet again. He tells Batwoman that the only way to beat Batman is to exhaust him in every conceivable way. So at this point in time, we have 4 total statements of Bane telling you that he needs to weaken Batman in order to beat him. So much so that he specifically says he could never beat Batman normally. So for this next section, which is all of Rebirth, I need you to keep this in mind because it's very important to the overall narrative and the story being told to us. Okay, so Batman and Bane fight a lot within Rebirth. Bane is the major villain of an 85-issue Batman storyline within Tom King's Batman run. So in this section, there's a lot to cover. And there's a lot of story that we need to understand for these fights to be contextualized properly, for us to understand the actual outcome of who wins this matchup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just going over every fight and explaining what happens in the fight, and then I'm going to explain the overarching storyline, and then we can understand what these fights actually mean. So Batman first comes to Bane beaten and battered, and Bane takes advantage of this and breaks Batman's back, throwing him into a prison cell. Batman would later escape this prison cell and have a rematch with Bane, where it ends in Batman getting the help of Catwoman, off-guarding Bane and breaking his back, just like how Bane did prior to Batman in this same encounter. Next up, their fight progresses in Gotham City, where the two fight in an alleyway and Bane beats up Batman. This goes on for a little bit just for Batman to escape. Batman escapes back to Arkham Asylum, where their fight picks up 24 hours later. The two fight again in Arkham Asylum, going blow for blow in an extremely bloody matchup. This again goes on for a little bit until Bane gets the upper hand on Batman, stomping on his limp corpse, just for Batman to lock back in at the end and headbutt Bane, appearing to defeat him. Time progresses where Bane would get instated into Arkham Asylum, just for him to break out later on and attack Batman in Wayne Manor. Bane would proceed to just keep beating on Batman. In this fight, it's really not fair. And it results in Bane breaking Batman's back once again, with Alfred admitting that Batman had lost and that Bane had broke Batman. And then finally, the last fight of the story arc takes place. Batman gets Bane to agree to a matchup with no suits, no masks. A fair 1v1 bout between the two rivals. However, once Bane agrees, Batman reveals that he lied and he is willing to get help from Catwoman. The two proceed to 2v1 Bane, getting him in weakened positions and injecting him with super venom that's laced on the batarangs. Once these batarangs injected the venom into Bane's system, it would effectively overload Bane, which would kill him, if not for Batman having the antidote on him. Bane, refusing to give up, continues to fight through this and ends with Batman tackling him to the ground. And in this moment, Batman raises Bane over his head and decides to break his back the same way Bane has done to him in the past. But the fight is interrupted by Thomas Wayne. Those are all of the fights between Batman and Bane within this run. Now, at face value, it would seem that Bane is just concretely above Batman. He's beating him up, is he not? However, there's so much story to go over that explains what is happening. So let's go over that and understand what the story is actually positing to us. Every event that happened in this run was orchestrated by Bane, all to reflect the same narrative within the two's rivalry that there has always been. Bane understands that the only way he could beat Batman is by weakening him in every conceivable way. So he set out to do just that. It all started with the plane. Bane arranged for Batman to have to stop this plane, which would force Batman into realizing that he was going to die. In this moment, it forced Batman to think about his mortality and all that he has and hasn't done to save the city. In these final moments, Batman would be saved by Gotham and Gotham Girl. This gave Batman hope that one day he would be able to retire and the city would be safe. But due to Bane's intervention, this could not happen. Gotham died and Gotham Girl was broken. But this was Batman's redemption. He needed this. So he set out to get Psycho Pirate from Santa Prisca, which is Bane's hometown. In this moment, Batman was unsure of Bane's capabilities. He knew that Bane could beat him, so he just let Bane beat him. The mission was more important. So in the two instances where Batman got his back broken and then rematched Bane and Catwoman broke Bane's back, Batman allowed himself to lose to Bane. Bane would then orchestrate further events to further break Batman mentally, setting up a war of jokes and riddles, a war between Joker and Riddler, where Batman would be pushed to finally break his no-kill rule just for it to be stopped by the Joker. Bane had Nightwing shot in the head, making Batman think he lost his son. Batman would almost lose control, severely injuring Victor Freeze, who at the time was an innocent man. And most importantly, he showed Batman a universe without Catwoman. This was important because after losing Gotham and Gotham Girl, Batman thought he had no salvation. But due to Bane's intervention, Batman turned to Catwoman, thinking as if the only way he can exist in a world where he's happy would be him retiring the cowl and settling down with Catwoman. Getting Booster Gold to show him the reality without Catwoman only furthered his certainty that she was his salvation. This was done just for him to get Catwoman stripped from him on their wedding day, which we know broke Batman like never before. The wording of this sentiment is very important because the original event that broke Batman was the death of his parents. Yet this accumulation of trauma broke Batman like never before. And this isn't the end of all the things Bane had done to Batman throughout the span of 85 issues. And this isn't me speculating on how Batman could possibly be mentally nerfed. Issue 72 sees Thomas Wayne explaining Bane's plan in full, depicting what Bane did and why he did it. It's all for the end result that Alfred explained to Batman at the end of issue 71. Batman would lose. Bane broke him. So let's tie this back with the overarching narrative that I've been trying to establish throughout this video. Bane believes the only way he can beat Batman is by exhausting him in every conceivable way. We even see within the beginning of Rebirth, Batman does indeed fight Bane. This comic does not take place during Batman's Rebirth run, meaning this is before all of the mental nerfs Bane placed upon Batman. We know this because Batman switched his suit from the Rebirth suit to his classic suit due to the mental trauma. So him being in his Rebirth suit tells us this is before all of the mental nerfs. And this Bane is not only on Venom, but he confirmed to Batman that he would be trying if they were to fight again. And in that specific scenario, Batman doesn't have any issues with Bane. So it's already established that within the 2016 era of Batman, he's above Bane, which only gives more credence to the notion that this run was a weakened Batman by all of the mental nerfs that Bane posed upon Batman throughout all the events that happened during this run. Now that we've established that Batman had severe mental nerfs throughout this run, we can go over the fights more closely and explain how these mental nerfs played a part in the fights specifically.
So, I had already briefly explained the first two fights of the run. Batman let himself lose here. When he first went to Santa Prisca, he went and fought Bane's army, and he got beaten by them. And then the second time he came back to Santa Prisca, he just destroys the army, going to show that in the first one, he let himself lose. And then when he actually goes to fight Bane again, he lets himself lose to Bane so Catwoman can off-guard him and break his back, just like how Bane broke his back prior. That's the gist of these two fights. But the next fight is a little bit more complicated. Batman appears to just be getting beaten up in the alleyway in Gotham. However, if we look here, Batman did this on purpose to distract Bane. It was all a part of his plan to get Bane to go to Arkham Asylum. And some may ask, why would Batman do that? If he could just beat Bane here, why would he bother to distract him and bring him to another location? Well, the mental nerfs have been in play this entire time. Having Batman experience the plane in the very first issue of this run, Bane effectively broke Batman's confidence. Having Gotham Girl and Gotham show up just to be stripped away and Gotham to supposedly die, this already started to break Batman. Despite being shown to be better than Bane very recently, Batman is still questioning his own abilities. Thinking he was going to die to the plane made Batman question his mortality and if he would be enough to save Gotham, especially after Gotham and Gotham Girl weren't able to do so. This guilt and uncertainty is doing so much damage to Batman mentally, he's losing control of himself. But this is more than just a lack of confidence on Batman's part. This is bigger than that. This is again a part of their rivalry. Alfred asks Batman why he would let all of the villains loose in Arkham Asylum for them to fight Bane, and Batman responds with, "I had no choice." At face value, this seems like Batman is so unconfident in his own abilities that he thinks he has to get help and weaken Bane so he can beat him. But this isn't exactly true. Alfred brings up how Batman could just call the Justice League, and unless we're saying that the Justice League, including Superman, The Flash, Wonder Woman, can't beat Bane, then when Batman tells us he has no choice, it isn't because he feels like he needs help, it's because he needs to put Bane in a scenario where he could embarrass him. That's why when Alfred tells him to just run away, Batman says he can't do this because of the things that Bane has done. This is also why Batman acknowledged that despite having called the Justice League before, it solves nothing. Unless Batman can break Bane, he's just going to keep coming. So Batman devised a plan with Catwoman to mirror the exact trauma that Bane implemented on Batman. Batman would distract Bane for Catwoman to go and hang his lieutenants, the same way Bane hung the Robins. And then Batman would get Bane to fight Batman's rogues, the same way Bane got Batman to fight an army on Santa Prisca. Now, part of this is probably also because Batman was trying to even the playing field. You have to remember, Batman got his back broken by Bane very recently. He's still healing from this. And to distract Bane to put him in a position to go through all of these things, Batman needed to take a physical beating from Bane as well. Therefore, having Bane fight the rogues would also weaken Bane, so it's a more even fight. The two would square off once again, and if we read the dialogue here, Batman is explaining all of the things that has happened to him. He's having this entire mental conversation with his mother in his head. We know this because at the end of the fight, he's literally replying to the ghost of her. In the dialogue, Martha Wayne is saying how Batman sees that he's going to die to Bane here, and in that moment, Batman is giving up. He's letting himself go. This is a testimony of just how mentally nerfed Batman is, because we would know that Batman, under normal circumstances, would never give up. Meaning that Batman giving up here is a testimony for just how mentally broken he currently is. So take into account the fact that Batman is mentally nerfed, completely distracted, having this entire mental back and forth with his dead mother in his head, and already physically nerfed from having a fight with Bane the day before and getting beaten up on purpose, as well as having his back broken just a few days prior. It makes complete sense with all of that going on. Batman confirms that he would in fact lose to Bane within this fight. So the fight already isn't very applicable whatsoever. But just the cherry on top, Bane was actually faking this loss in this fight. Him losing and getting put into Arkham Asylum was all a part of his master plan. So up until this point, there's no scaling to be had for either Batman nor Bane. There's really nothing further to go over with the next fight. By this point, you should understand that Batman was completely broken by this point, and that's why Bane was so easily able to dispatch of him. But it's the next fight that gets really contentious. Batman 2v1s Bane by getting help with Catwoman. But is this a reflection of Batman being weaker than Bane and needing help? Well, not necessarily. After Bane had broken Batman, Batman needed to go and train with Catwoman to regain his strength. And that training with Catwoman made him strong again. Now, whether or not this makes Batman believe that he can beat Bane again isn't really confirmed by the story, but either way, it doesn't really matter, because Batman explains how Gotham Girl was a weapon that Bane has against Batman, and Bane, Gotham Girl, and Thomas Wayne all expect Batman to go in on this alone. However, Batman recognizes that his strength isn't from fighting by himself, it's by his family and friends. He acknowledges that he can't beat Bane when Bane has a super weapon like Gotham Girl with him. So instead of doing what they expect him to do, which is just try to fight everybody by himself, he wants to show his strength with his friends and family and bring Catwoman with him and work together to defeat Bane. So in best case, Batman didn't know if he was strong enough to beat Bane, so he got help just in case. Or Batman did believe he could beat Bane by himself, but he wanted to get the help of his friends regardless, just to make it easier. Either way, Batman choosing to 2v1 Bane isn't a reflection of Batman being weaker than Bane. And there's nothing really in the fight itself to suggest that Bane would be stronger than Batman. All he did was temporarily stun Bruce, and Batman got right back up. The overall purpose of Batman employing this specific plan was really just to make things easier on himself. Instead of 1v1ing Bane in a fair fight, he just chose to take the simpler path, which would be trick Bane to take off his Venom modulator and then use the Venom to weaken Bane. Now, some believe Batman saying that Bane was so strong in this specific statement here reflects Bane being more powerful than Batman. However, the specifics about Bane's strength is being applied to the scenario where Batman would have to manually disarm Bane of his Venom modulator. Regardless if Batman's capable of beating Batman, I don't think any of us believe Batman is physically more powerful than Bane. So fighting him whilst also simultaneously overpowering him to take off the Venom modulator would be a difficult task, which is why Batman says Bane is too strong and just chooses to trick him into taking it off himself. Yeah, so in conclusion, throughout this entire 2016 Batman run, there isn't any actual scaling to be derived from any of the fights these two characters have.
So this guy Tom King decided to just make all of that way more complicated than it needed to be, but good news is we don't have to deal with anything substantial like that anymore. There's just 2 more fights left. The first comes from this black and white back issue of Batman the Brave and the Bold, and in this fight it's the entire Bat family versus Bane and Hush. In this fight, all we see is that Bane lands 1 hit on Batman and Batman gets knocked unconscious. However, through the dialogue, it's highly implied that Bane and Hush had been previously destroying the city, and Batman had to deal with that on some level, because Bruce is noting how he's tired and that he has no more left to give. In the midst of bouncing between Hush and Bane throughout this fight, the 1 hit that we do see landed on screen by Bane was enough to KO Batman. This could be suggesting Bane's superiority, as Batman has more help than Bane does in this, and there's no visible damage on Bane at this time. However, considering the dialogue and the inconsistency of Bane being able to do this, I believe it's more likely that Batman is tired from fighting whatever is going on in the city that's destroying it, whilst probably also being tired from this group fight and being slightly distracted by the safety of the Bat family as well. Which makes sense, as Batman's calling out to the Bat family as he's fighting, and the last time the Robins fought Bane, they lost horribly. So it's plausible Bruce is highly concerned and concentrated on making sure they're safe. The next fight they have is in this 1-panel fight, which depicts a larger fight that they had off panel. In this fight, Batman is recalling previous events and flashes back to having to fight Bane. We know that this is post City of Bane because Batman is depicted in his classic suit, which again he changed back to because of the events of City of Bane, whilst also other characters like Scarecrow in these flashbacks are using their post Joker War designs. Now all we see in this fight is 1 attack being landed, so we don't necessarily know how this was achieved or the context of the greater fight. However, if we look at all the previous fights, we can make an inference on what probably happened. When fighting Bane, Batman rarely ever uses gadgets. He just punches and kicks. And if he does use gadgets, it's just slight usages of grapples or batarangs. None of his more extraordinary gear like sonics or explosives. The only time this isn't the case is when there's extraordinary context in the specific storyline, such as City of Bane. Therefore, the most likely induction that we can have is that Batman just beat up Bane with punches and kicks. A lot of people get confused and think that this is a flashback to before City of Bane because of the timeline post City of Bane. However, when we look at it, it's much easier to understand than what is at face value. After City of Bane, Bane was locked up in Arkham Asylum. After Joker War, Bane would fake his death and escape Arkham. However, the greater public believed Bane to be dead because of the explosion at Arkham Asylum at the beginning of Fear State. These are all events well past the events of City of Bane. At the end of the Joker 2021 storyline, Bane would reveal that he is in fact alive, and Batman would be completely aware of this, wearing his Batman Incorporated batsuit from the time when he reverted back to Batman Inc. during the events of the Abyss storyline. This takes place just before the failsafe arc in 2023. From that point on, Bane is out of Arkham Asylum, known to be alive and fully on the loose. Where many people get confused is this statement by Maya Ducard in the Batman and Robin run during 2024. She was looking for Bane because he was missing. Many people interpreted this as Batman not having known or seen Bane since he broke out of jail, hence meaning that this fight couldn't have been post City of Bane because Batman didn't know where Bane was. But this isn't actually true. Maya admits that Bane had made some appearances post the Joker thing. This is obviously in reference to Bane appearing again in Joker 2021 after faking his death. Batman doesn't deny not having seen Bane or implies that he hasn't seen Bane since City of Bane. Maya is acknowledging that his presence has been known post these events, which is why he's randomly been showing up to meet characters like Red Hood. So all this means is after City of Bane, Bane faked his death, came back after Joker 2021, and Batman had beat him in that time period before he went missing again and escaped to Dinosaur Island. Meaning, as of their most recent encounter, Batman was the victor. Going to show, now that Batman's back mentally and physically healthy, he has returned to beating Bane. So finally, we've gone through a majority of their fights, and we've gone through enough evidence to come to a conclusion. Batman, when he's healthy, mentally and physically, he beats Bane. The only time Bane stands any real chance against Batman is when he's so physically and emotionally and mentally exhausted that Bane is able to defeat Bruce. I hope you all enjoyed this extremely long video. If you like inverse breakdowns like this, please leave a like and comment so I know to do more, and let me know who you want me to do next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.